Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us and welcome to this webinar series called Step by Step, the Higg FEM Verification Trail. We from Leadership and Sustainability have the honor to be your guide today. And this is the first in a series of webinar where we'll take you into the depth of all the different sections in the Higg FEM, the Facility Environmental Module. But my first question to you today is, can you hear me well? Is the voice okay? Can you hear me? It seems that you can hear me. Yes, sure, yes, okay. Good, very good. Thanks for that. All right. So, my name is Karin Ekberg, and I'm the CEO of Leadership and Sustainability. And I have 35 years of work experience to improve performance at corporate strategic level and at facility level within the sustainability area. And I have been responsible for environment globally at adidas for during several years, and I have had similar sustainability oversight positions in other companies. We, within leadership and sustainability, we have a systematic approach, and we also have a great deal of manufacturing knowledge and a drive to create change and measurable results. We are very much focused on that to really create improvements. We do consulting and we do a lot of Higg FEM verifications, SLCP verifications, etc. And let me just also show you how the GoToWebinar function. You are all on mute today in order to ensure audio quality, but you are welcome to send us your questions during the presentation via the questions function. And in a follow-up email, we will provide you with a link to a recording of this webinar and a link to download the presentation as well. And just a call out, this is copyrighted material, so don't just reproduce it, please. And the agenda for today is, I will give you a brief introduction to the verification trail and the purpose of the verification trail, and a brief overview of the SAC Higg FEM, but then we will focus today on section 1, the facility information and permit section, and section 2, the environmental management system section. And then we will also give you some information about our services and how you can best contact us. And now let me introduce you to the verification trail. The purpose of the verification trail is to help you gain a better understanding of the Higg Index and the Higg FEM, of course, in particular, and its meaning for your company, for your facility. We have a section-wise guidance through all processes, and you will also become acquainted with all the requirements from SAC and from the How to Higg. And we will support you with preparing you for your verification. And here is an overview of all the sections in the Higg FEM. And as you see, we will focus on the first two today. And just as an overview to the Higg Index, here you can see the entire universe of the Higg Index. We have the brand and retail module. We have the facilities tools, the facilities environmental module, which is our focus today. And we also have the facilities social and labor module, which you may also know on the market as the SLCP. The FSLM and the SLCP are identical. And then we have the product tools, the material sustainability index, and the product module. And now to the Higg FEM. So the Higg FEM is an online self-assessment tool for facilities, and it can also be verified by usually a third-party organization. The sections we have already seen, and then in every sections there are a lot of questions that you will respond to, and they are all listed based on applicability, which means that you should get the questions that are really relevant and applicable to your facility. We work with 3 levels. I will show you a bit more about that. And there is a scoring involved as well. We have an annual cycle for Higg FEM, and it is a calendar year. So with the SLCP FSLM, it's a rolling year, but here for the Higg FEM, it's always the calendar year. And this means that with the Higg FEM 2020, which you are now filling out your self-assessment for. That is for all the data you have for the calendar year of 2020. And then verification can take place between January and December. The self-assessment, you should do it by April 30th if you want to be part of the larger exercising of a benchmarking that SAC and Higg Co does. But it is possible to develop or fulfill or fill in your self-assessment later in the year as well and post it. You just don't have the flexibility on posting, unposting, etc. And usually the verification, which is a check on if your responses in your self-assessment are accurate or not accurate. So it's not like an audit, it's not a pass-fail audit, but the verification usually takes place on site, but can be done off-site as well. And especially during last year and in this year as well, we will have a lot of off-site verifications, also due, of course, to all the different travel restrictions that we have in many regions and countries of the world. And then there is also guidance available for you, a very, very detailed and very helpful guidance, the How to Higg document. And you can see here, once you receive the presentation, you can click on that link, and then you will have, you will get access to the How to Higg. And now, the 3 levels I mentioned. The first level, level 1, is about understanding and tracking performance. So it's a very basic level, and here you can get 25 points in total in every section. And then at level 2, this is about baselining, setting targets, improving your performance, and here you can get 50 points. And at level 3, which is the beyond, basically the beyond compliance, beyond even performance improvement, and go into leading practices. And here you can get 25 points as well. And you can see here that this red dotted line, this is a gateway. So you actually need to respond to all questions at level 1 in every single or in the individual sections before you can move on to the next levels in that specific section. So you can actually, in different sections, you can be at different levels. Sometimes perhaps you are stuck at level 1, sometimes you can move on to levels 2 and 3. But at level 1, you need to respond, be able to respond with either yes or partial yes to all questions before the gate, the door opens up to levels 2 and 3. And also, we will speak a bit more about the different applicabilities that are available, and different applicabilities may lead to some different point distribution between the levels that you can see here. Okay, and what are the applicability questions? Well, those are questions that are designed to find out which type of facility you have, and therefore which questions you should respond to. So this section or this pre-section in every section is actually very important for you to fill in accurately, because otherwise you might get the wrong questions. You may get too few or you may get too many. So it is about understanding your type of production. And as I said, it's important to respond carefully to them. And now an overview also of the Higg FEM verification process. You first complete your self-assessment in your FEM, and then you engage your verifier. And usually the verifiers, in order to make a proposal to you, they need to have some information from you in order to understand how many days the verification will take. What is also important is that they need to know for the chemical section at which level you are at, and if you are using chemicals in your production process. Because if you use chemicals in your production process and are at levels 2 and 3, then you need a chemical specialist verifier to verify your module. Then you need to make your self-assessment via the VFEM available to the verifier. So this means that you actually need to have 2 modules. You could probably buy a package of this when you bought your self-assessment module, your FEM. You probably could buy the VFEM as well. If you haven't done so and want to do a verification, you need to buy the VFEM as well. And then the verifier will review the documents and also inform about any issues beforehand. This is important that the verifier prepares well and has seen your documents and your responses before the verification actually starts. And then the verifier also sends an agenda ahead of the verification. We have the on-site or the off-site verification, and then we have a closing meeting, and the results can then be posted on higg.org, and you can share your results also with your buyers or with your peers. And there is a lot of guidance available from SAC about the on-site verification process and also about the off-site verification process. And please also remember that to buy both the FEM and the VFEM before October 31st. Afterwards, you cannot buy any of these. So if you are considering doing a verification only towards the end of this year, then make sure that you have bought the VFEM before end of October in any case. Okay, and then some just very general advice to you. I know that some of you are new to the Higg FEM and to completing the self-assessment. Have one person who is responsible. It is really good to have someone who can coordinate the work for you. And so have someone who is appointed, then of course read the How to Higg and the verification preparation guidance, respond very accurately to the questions. And I cannot emphasize this enough. It is so important that you spend the time to understand the questions and respond accurately to the questions. So if you're not sure, then go and read the How to Higg or ask someone, but please take the time to really respond accurately to the questions. And also in many places, you will be able to upload documents as a proof. Make sure that you upload the correct documents as well. And regarding your documentation management, make a file where you have all the documents related to the Higg FEM in one place, sort them according to the sections, name them according to the questions. So for example, EMS question 1, EMS question 2, and then you have some title to say what this is about, this document. And that will make it much easier for you for next year's self-assessment, but of course also for your verification. So the documentation is important. Then targets and baselines, and we will speak a lot about targets and baselines in our upcoming webinars. Today, not so much, but targets and baselines are very important for the energy section, for the water section, and for the waste section. And there we will give you a lot of guidance. SAC has also prepared additional guidance there on how to report quantitative data in a correct manner. Be aware also of the time needed. You may need a few weeks to complete the self-assessment, and ultimate goal is of course to improve every year. So the Higg FEM is in this sense very aspirational. There is always room for improvement. There are always also more challenging questions that you can take on as you move upwards from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. And of course, this is something we want to do, all of us. We want to improve every year. And in the environmental area, it's so important to always have continuous goals for improvement. Okay, so this was the introduction. And now let's go to the facility information and the permit section, the first section. And there is a lot of information here. This section is about for categorizing your factory and should be completed first before all other sections. So the other sections you can take in the order that you wish, but this section should be completed first because there is a lot of information there that actually influences the data in the other sections and the question as well. And this section is not scored. And the information that is collected here is about country, industry sector, facility type, for example, apparel, footwear, etc., material types, operating days, total number of employees, And with the total number of employees, here you should indicate the average number of employees. This has changed since last year. And today you should report the average number of employees and not the number of employees at the end of the year. And this is still online. This guidance has still not been given, but in the How to Higg, it is indicated as a change that you should have the average number of employees. Then your annual volumes, and you should also give information about your on-site water treatment. And what you can see here on this slide now are the green boxes. So for those of you who are familiar with Higg FEM and have worked with Higg FEM previous years as well, then you can see now that we have marked up here always with a green box whenever there is something new in the Higg FEM. Maybe new questions or just new guidance. In any way, we have marked that up accordingly so that you can see the changes that have been done. And then here about the annual volume calculation. And this is not new, but it is important that you keep this in mind. It should not be reported the annual production volume, but the total amount of product shipped or sold in the last calendar year. We can debate if this is the perfect number to be reported, but this is how SAC has decided. So the total amount of product shipped or sold should be reported. And then that number should not include the total amount of rejects in the last year. So if you have products that you have not been able to ship or sell, you are not allowed to include those products, those rejects that you have. And then you should select a unit, cubic meters, kilogram, whatever. What is new here is standard allowed minutes. And the standard allowed minutes, it's a metric that provides an indicator of the time allowed to produce a product by workers, including some general allowances. And this is a metric that is quite useful when it comes to normalizing your data reporting. And we have here an example. In this factory, they produce two different product types, one polo shirts and V-neck shirts. And you can see the processes, they are the same, but the time needed is different. So the SAM per piece for the polo shirt is 15, and for the V-neck shirt it's 12. And then we also see how many products, the number of products shipped or sold in the reporting year. And if you multiply this, you get the SEM per product type. So in this case, in the first case with the polo shirt, 15 times 100,000 gives you the result of 1,500,000. And also with the V-neck shirt, accordingly, 12 times 500,000 gives you 6 million. And now you can add those up, and then you have the total SAM in your factory. And this number you can then also use for normalization. When you, for example, report on energy, you can normalize your baseline and your targets with the SAM. So you divide your energy consumption, for example, your electricity consumption, divided by your total SAM. And but we will talk more about normalizing later. But this is a good number because if you have many different product types in your factory, and the volumes fluctuate year by year. So one year perhaps you have lots of polo shirts, another year you have lots of V-neck shirts, and obviously if you normalize just with the number of products produced, then it will be difficult to compare year by year if you have such fluctuations in the types of products. And with the SEM, this should stay more constant. Okay, and then there are some updated questions. The industry sector has actually been expanded, so we are now looking to include also electronics, toys, and hard goods. And the product categories are also expanded accordingly. And then facility process, etc., those have been aligned. As I mentioned, SAM has been added. There are also volume units that have been added. there is an updated question on on-site water treatment. Previously, it was called the pre-treatment for fresh water, but the actual treatment steps that you had listed there many of them are actually wastewater treatment, so it was not so logical. But now it's called on-site water treatment and includes then both pre-treatment and wastewater treatment. And there, for that question, you have lots of different alternatives that you can select from. The list is longer than this here. Pre-treatment, primary treatment, secondary treatment, zero liquid discharge, etc. So there are lots of alternatives there. And so this is the part about the facility info. And now let's go to the requirements part, to the permits part. And here there are several requirements. You need to have a valid operating license. If you don't have that, you can continue with completing the self-assessment for Higg FEM, but you will not receive any score. So your score will basically be 0. And then you also need to report if you had any government-issued environmental violation records in the reporting year. If you have a record in the IPE, that's a Chinese NGO and only active in China, if you have records there, violation records, you should report on that. And then you should also report details on your facilities, environmental permits, requirements, and compliance statements. For example, water use permits, water discharge permits, air permits, and chemical permits, etc. It's a long list there. And what is new is you can upload multiple permits. So it may be that, for example, for chemical permits, you have several different permits, and then now you can then upload several documents at the same time. And with that, I would like to go and show you online what it looks like. So let me go there. Here we have the Higg index, the Higg FEM, and we are here inside leadership and sustainability, inside our account. And we are in the section site info and permits. So you see here, first you add the country and then the industry sector, and you see you can edit here. So it's quite a long list now that you can check or uncheck accordingly. And then you click done, and then you have your selection. And then for every single category that you have, apparel product categories, you can also add all the different products you have. It's a long list. And footwear product categories, you see here again, boots, cleats, court shoes, dress shoes, etc. Again, a long list, etc. So for every industry sector that you have selected up here, you will also get a list to select the actual product types that you have. And then we have here a question about your facility type. And again, you see here a long list. The final product assembly, printing, material production, hard product component and trim production, and electronics facility type you can also select here. And then you have different final product assembly, printing, and then here comes a long list of different materials that you can have, where you can also select the types of materials you use. For example, here for the textiles, perhaps you are using acetate as well, so you can select that. Perhaps you're using wool, let's say, and then you can select accordingly. All right, and then there is this additional information about how many days you operate, the number of full-time employees, etc. The pre-treatment, primary treatment, secondary treatment, and then we have all the permits. And here you can see now the list of different environmental permits that you can here add. You say yes, no regarding the type of permit you have, and then you should also upload them. All right, so let me go back to the presentation. And by the way, we will have time for questions towards the end of this presentation. So please feel free to send them in the question function, and we will take them then towards the end of the presentation. I see also that we have already a question if we can get this presentation after the webinar, and yes. So all of you who are registered to this webinar, you will receive the presentation and the recording after this webinar within 1 or 2 days afterwards. All right, now the next section, and here we have some more flesh. And this is the environmental management system section. So the EMS, the environmental management system, this is a holistic strategy and process to identify, track, and manage the environmental impacts of your facility over time. And it is possible to make significant changes in your facility without a comprehensive plan, but if you really want to maximize environmental performance, you should set also a long-term strategy that will inform decision-making on environmental management. And for example, there is available the ISO 14001, the ISO standard for environmental management system. And I can only say that I think that the management system approach in general is a very good approach. It fosters your thinking in terms of understanding your situation, developing policies, developing plans, long-term plans, implementing it, setting up your organization, creating results, follow up and report, etc. So it gives you a very good structure that you can apply on any area, actually, on environment, on social, on chemicals, etc. So it's a very helpful structure and system. And now the Higg FEM, and I will show you what it looks like. Here you see all the questions in this section. At level 1, we have quite a lot of questions, and some of them are a bit more difficult to manage. And then at level 2, we have only 2 questions, and at level 3, we have 4 questions. So this is the overview, level by level, of all the questions. And now let's go to the questions. So the question number 1 is, are one or more employees at your facility responsible for coordinating your facility's environmental management activities? And here you should list all your employees. You should list their function, how much time they spend on environment, and which area specifically that they are overseeing. Are they overseeing all environmental aspects? Perhaps they are overseeing only chemicals management, etc. So all the persons who are involved in some way or another with the environmental program should be listed here. And you will here also need to, for example, during verification, you will need to also show the accordingly the documentation that you have available. And this is a question, the EMS strategy question. Does your facility have a company environmental management strategy that guides long-term decision-making on environmental management? This is for some facilities, this is more challenging. Usually you may have been operating on a year-by-year basis, and here you actually need to have a long-term strategy. And it needs to be, and I have some more details for you here, it needs to have a perspective of 3+ years, including goals. So for 2020, for example, your reporting year today, you will need a strategy that goes into 2023 at least, perhaps even 2025, but the very least it needs to go into 2023, including goals set. So you need to have, like, for example, an energy saving goal for 2023, water saving goal for 2023. And it should also be quite comprehensive. It should cover all your significant environmental impacts. And it should, of course, also be supported by facility leadership and be communicated also to all employees. And it should be aligned with the ISO 14001. And yes, the significant environmental impacts we already had listed, so it comes twice here because it's so important. And in order to reach yes here, you need to have the strategy signed off by factory management, and it should provide a direction and a plan of actions designed to achieve goals within a defined timeline. And the strategy document should be well written, and you should also have an authorized committee to guide planning, decision making, and all the activities around it. So it should not just be like a half a page and then you put it somewhere in a file and you don't look at it that very often. Actually, this EMS strategy can be your overall improvement plan also for the Higg FEM. So I can really recommend to use this question here to build out your overall improvement plan and your long-term overall improvement plan for the Higg FEM. And then the next question here is about identifying the impact. So what you need to know is you need to identify the significant environmental impacts associated with your operations within the factory premises. And we very often see two types of reports. For those factories who are quite new, you may have an impact assessment report from when you applied to build your factory and from your permit as well. And that may be quite a lengthy document. What we often see here is that there is no prioritization. There is no indication of which environmental impacts that are really significant for your facility. Then on the other hand, what we sometimes also see is a very detailed approach where you basically go department by department and conduct a risk analysis. So in every department, you investigate all the different types of activities that are going on, and then you look at all of them individually and you check which impact do they have on the environment. So, for example, in the spot cleaning department, which environmental impact categories do I have here? Well, I might have VOC that may go out into the as an outdoor emission, but it may also go into an indoor emission. There may be a health and safety aspect here. I may have waste. I may have containers of empty containers that are then hazardous waste. And so this is the way you would do. You may have clothes. Perhaps you have been using clothes to do the spot cleaning. Then you may also have a waste, a hazardous waste that you need to take care of out of this as well. And so this is the way you would do it. And then, for example, in the printing department, you have the same thinking. You look at all the different activities and look at all the impacts you have on the environment and, of course, also on health and safety. And we have found, this is not from us, but we have found a really nice video. It's a bit longer, but it really takes you through step by step on how you can do it when you would like to do a department by department analysis. And what I think is really important here is also that you don't forget to prioritize and identify which aspects are really significant for me. So it should not just be a list. Yes, we have air emissions, we have chemicals, we have waste, so that you just list all the Higg FEM aspects that are covered, but you should really do a much more thorough study and understand. For in my factory, we use a lot of chemicals, we use a lot of water, we have a lot of wastewater, we use a lot of energy, and perhaps those four are the most important for us then. Okay. And then the next question is about monitoring environmental permits. So obviously, if you have several permits, they may be valid for a year or for 2 years or for 3 years, but you need to make sure that you always renew them on time. So don't wait until the permit is expired and then go for renewal. You have to do the renewal earlier, and this is what we're asking for here. And then another question, and this goes a bit deeper. This is about monitoring laws, regulations, and standards, and having a system in place to identify, monitor, and verify all laws, regulations, standards, codes, etc., for your significant environmental impacts. And this can be quite a large document because you really need to identify all those laws and regulations, etc. And then you need to also indicate or include information about which rule in this law it applies to my factory, and what have I done to make sure that I comply to this rule. And then you also need to have a process in place so that you, at least every year, you check that you are still in compliance. So this can be quite a large document, and SAC has made available a template for this. This is just the regulatory registry here, but actually for both Q4 and Q5, there are templates available. And they the links still need to be activated by SSC, but there are placeholders there, so they are working on that, and then very soon you will have those templates available there. So the link will be working very soon. And then the next question, number 6, is one that is perhaps not a standard environmental question in general. This is about maintenance of all your equipment. And obviously this is very important, and most factories have this, because this also comes, of course, from a quality perspective. But why do we need to have that also in terms of environment? Well, of course, because the better the equipment, the machines are maintained, the better your environmental performance will be, and the smaller the risk that you will have a leak in a pipe, or machines that don't work, or a wastewater treatment system that is not operating as it should. So this is important. And here you need also to upload a document to show this, and your document should include a schedule for the maintenance, a log for the maintenance, procedures, including a list of all the equipments that should be included in the maintenance, date checked, performance status, etc. So we would like to see quite a lot of information in that uploaded document here. And now, this was level 1. If we go over to level 2, and the first question there is the EMS strategy review. So we already talked about question 2, where we developed our EMS strategy. And this question, does your facility review the environmental management strategy with your facilities managers each calendar year? And this is also a typical ISO 14001 question. This question wants to make sure that you keep your facility management informed about your performance when it comes to your environmental management strategy. They do not want to know all the details about this pump or that pump or this dyeing process specifically. But what they want to know overall is your process working well? Are you improving the environmental performance year by year in every area? And they also want to know if you have recommendations for improvements on things that need to be done in order to be able to improve further. So, of course, this review should be at a high management level, should not contain all the details. These details you can take with your operations people or within your own team, but your management needs to have this. And this will also make sure that you have a continuous improvement cycle where you also, and usually within ISO 14001, you should really review if the system as such, if your strategy as such is also performing the way it should. And then next question at level 2 is about the technical competence of your employees. Do they have the technical competence required to do their job? So for all the people who are involved in the environmental management, they should be qualified. They should have an environmental degree or an operations degree, a technical degree of some sort, or they should have done courses as well in environmental management. So there are of course many ways to educate yourself, to improve yourself in the environmental area. You can also be a long-term employee in a factory and have seen a lot of practical things about environmental management over the years and have learned a lot just through your different tasks in the factory. But it is really important that you know that your team members who are taking care of the environment, that they are knowledgeable and competent also to do that job. So that is what this question is about. And then we have a broader question about employee awareness. Does your facility promote awareness of the environmental strategy to employees? So this is really something that is important, that you should communicate and train all your employees about your environmental strategy. So should not only be a team of 10 persons who know about it. It should really be everyone should know about it, because everyone is connected to an environmental impact in some way. Perhaps when they are using the toilets, or are washing their hands, or in the kitchen, or when they are using their machines that they are operating, or for example at a lunch break, that they know that they should turn off the lights, for example, in the lunch break, and of course in the evening as well when they leave the factory. So everyone in the factory should know about the environmental strategy and the plans. And the next question here is about engaging your subcontractors. And this is about factories who are doing subcontracting work for you. And the question is, does your facility monitor, evaluate, and or engage with your subcontractors on their environmental performance using the Higg index? And the idea here is really that you basically promote the Higg index to your subcontractors. And here, what we would like to see in order to understand that you have a yes is, we would like to see a list of all subcontractors that your facility conducts business with, along with which ones that have posted the Higg FEM module. Obtain a list you can obtain a list from the accounting department and cross-reference all subcontractors that are listed. You should also have some proof of Higg index engagement, for example, the Higg.org connections and shared modules, etc. And you should have a subcontractor evaluation system, potentially a training, an annual training for your subcontractors. And in that case, we would like to see also the training materials. And then the next question is about the local engagement. Does your facility engage in environmental improvement in your local context? So are you doing something in your neighborhood? Are you promoting NGOs there? Are you supporting schools there? Are you letting students visit your factory to see and learn about your environmental practices? And here again, there are lots of follow-up questions to this one, specifically about what type of environmental engagement you have with the people or with the organizations locally. And so there are quite a lot of follow-up questions there where you need to explain your different programs then in more detail. And then the last question, this is about engaging upstream suppliers. So very similar to the question about with your subcontractors, it is important to be aware of your chemical, raw material, or other material suppliers, and be in direct communication with them about your environmental values as well. So for instance, you want to make sure you are purchasing chemicals from a supplier that gives you accurate information so that you can work also under the best possible conditions. And therefore, the question is, does your facility monitor, evaluate, and or engage with your upstream suppliers using the Higg index? And here you have to have a list of all upstream suppliers your facility conducts business with, and proof of a Higg index engagement. So it is not that you have to have all suppliers already on the Higg for this, but you need to be able to show that you are actually engaging with them, have invited them, and have informed them also about the Higg FEM. And with that, we are good in time. We have some time to go on the Higg.org platform again. So let me go there. And here we have the EMS section. So as always, an introduction to every section. And then we begin with the question 1, with are one or more employees at your facility responsible for coordinating your facility's environmental management activities? And if I say yes, which everyone will do, then you can list here the different persons you have, what the job title is, the time they spend, full-time, half-time, part-time, perhaps they are seasonal, perhaps they are contract supporters, then which environmental aspects they are working on, and then you should also describe the roles and responsibilities. And then here we now have the question about the long-term environmental strategy. And if I respond yes here, then I should also select all topics that are covered by my strategy. And in this case here, I have selected all the different categories that we have in the Higg FEM as well. And I should also upload the environmental management strategy. If I cannot do that, I can also describe the document. I can describe my strategy here, but I really encourage you to have a document available that you can upload. In general, the more documents you upload, the better it is for yourself to be able to know why you have responded in a certain way. And also there are some questions where you can actually add more information and describe things more in detail. Please do that, because after a while you forget, and this way it is always possible to come back to your responses and have a look and know, yes, I have used this document or I have used that. And it's yeah, so I think that is really important. Of course, you should not upload any confidential information, because everyone with whom you share your module will also have access to the uploaded documents. So no confidential information here, please. Yes, and then the next question, number 3, about the significant environmental impacts. The question number 4 about having a program in place and review and monitor environmental permit status. And perhaps we can go to the local engagement question to show you what that can look like. Let me see. Here it comes, this question. There. Does your facility engage in environmental improvement in your local context? If you respond yes here, you can now select all the different ways that you can do that. So here you see we support conservation or improvement projects for environmental issues. If I say yes here, I can then select here the topics that are relevant for that, and then I should also describe the work that I'm doing here. And then do we work with other similar businesses to share best practice? And then again, we should select the topics and describe the work, etc. So you see here, there are lots of follow-up questions here related to that question. And with that, I would like to go back and give you the opportunity to ask questions to me. And let me see here, okay? Yes, so here is one question. The VFM is necessary only in the case we decide to proceed with the verification of the FEM self-assessment. Yes, that's correct. Only that case. Otherwise, you don't need it. If you only do the self-assessment, then you only need the FEM module. I have a question here also. We are a yarn dyeing. How can we get this calculation? Are you talking about the standard allowed minutes, probably? Yes, this might be more difficult for you. It may be that you may be able to divide it into different dyeing processes or dyeing lots that you have, but here it might be a bit more complicated to do this. So perhaps you would rather report with meter, for example. And then yeah, there is a question about the SEM per piece method. If you could just review the slide once you get the presentation, and then you can read there. And then this is a question about wastewater actually. What about facilities that do not have an own ETP but are connected to an external ETP plant? This is fine. This is okay as long as it is according to local regulation. You can discharge your wastewater into an external wastewater treatment plant. And in the wastewater section, there are actually questions, applicability questions that ask if you have industrial wastewater, and then if you are treating your domestic and your industrial wastewater together, and if you are treating it on-site or off-site. So that's fine. You will just have the corresponding applicability and get the corresponding questions. Yes, again, one question about SEM, how you can use this tool this year for setting baseline. So if you have, if you're a garment factory and have several different products and perhaps fluctuating volumes of products year by year, then it might be possible for you to use the SEM tool. So if you go to that slide with that calculation example, you need to differentiate for every different product group you have, and then you calculate your SEM, and then you can multiply then by the number of products for that particular product category, and then you have the total SEM for that product, and then you add all of them up, and you can divide then, for example, your energy consumption, your electricity consumption with that total SEM. But perhaps you are already working with another normalized baseline that you feel comfortable with, and that you have where you have the feeling that it works well for you. It is not a recommendation that you just must use SAM. It is really very much depending on your type of manufacturing and what works best for you. In general, I can say that most often it makes sense to normalize your baselines and, of course, then also your target setting. But we will talk much more about this actually already tomorrow when we have the water section. Yes, there is one question about the EMS strategy. Is it mandatory to take a long-term action plan in all sections? If we have for example, take a long-term strategy in only the energy section, will that be acceptable to get full point? In this case, probably not, but you don't need to cover all, but you need to cover your significant environmental impacts. So if you in question 3, where you have defined your significant environmental impacts, if you have energy, chemicals, and water there, for example, then your strategy needs to cover those 3. Factory can move to level 2 or 3 if the answer is yes or partial yes. Right? Yes, that is correct. At level 1, all questions need to have the response either yes or partial yes. And in that case, you should be able to move on to levels 2 and 3. Here, is there any detailed explanation of type of on-site water treatment to make choice at site info? I'm not sure what is in my site. I have wastewater treatment for domestic only, and it uses aerobe, anaerobe process. Yes, there is one document. If you go to the SETI@C website, roadmaptozero.org, and there you can search for the wastewater treatment technologies. There is a very good document there available about all different type of wastewater treatment practices. So please have a look there. Do we need to have an environmental impact assessment report every year? No, you don't need to have it. It needs to be actual. So it should not be 10-year-old. And of course, if you have changes in your operations and in your factory, then you do need to update your environmental impact assessment report. Is it possible to change the strategy and baseline? Yes, it is. You can change it every year if you want. Especially the strategy, you might need to adjust from time to time, perhaps not change it completely, but perhaps you see that something is not working well, you need to revise your goal, or perhaps you have already reached one of your long-term goals, then you can define a new goal. But regarding the baseline, I do not recommend to change it every year. You should try to have a rather stable baseline, and if possible, even have it aligned with your long-term strategy. So for example, if you have a strategy that you defined in 2020, then let's say you take a baseline 2019 for all the different water, waste, etc., and for your strategy, and then you say it's the end goal of that strategy is 2023. Then you should ideally keep that baseline 2019 until 2023, when you would develop a new strategy and accordingly a new baseline. And especially what we don't recommend is to change your baseline depending on your results. So you should really keep your baseline stable. And we will speak more about this later when we have the quantitative sections. You anyway need to report your result, your improvement compared to the last year. So your baseline in that case will not, even if you change the baseline, it will not impact that question. It will impact how you calculate it. Do we need to upload all documents before we release the self-assessment? If you're going to verify and are going to send your self-assessment to a verifier, yes, then all documents should be uploaded first, and you should also post then the assessment, and then you can send it over to or select the verifying body and send it over to the verifier. Yes, the records will be shared with you and on YouTube, and also the presentation. In question 5, for EMS, do we include customer environmental requirements like RSL and specific brand criteria in addition to legal compliance? Yes, I recommend doing that. That's the best way, because it's a great document to keep all different requirements that that have been put forward to you in one place. How could I consider production that I'm doing for others? So if you are doing subcontracting to some extent, the tool doesn't really differentiate for this. So what you report is really your entire factory. So basically the scope and the boundary is the factory itself. And then the tool doesn't ask you if some of the production you do is like only doing a subcontracting. So this makes it a more complicated, and you would need to consider it basically manually in your own reporting. Yes, if I can share some references over Higg, there is a link to the How to Higg in this presentation, and the How to Higg is a very wealth of information. There are lots of information there that you can see. Okay, let me see. Yes, how do I go with local engagement? Yeah, you need to go to the How to Higg. And if you look at the questions, you can select yes and then check what the follow-up questions are. There are lots of different ways of engaging locally with the local communities. And now I see we have more questions here. Because we have such a large audience today, I will respond to those all other questions via email. And with that, I would like to close our webinar. I do have some additional slides, so I need another minute with you. We are also SLCP verifiers, and we are trainers. So this is some information about the verification and also about the training. So, and we have a presentation about all our supply chain services, also ZTHC and other things we do. Please go and download that presentation and have a look. Please feel free to contact us. You can contact me via my booking page here, but you can also contact us directly via email. And you see some of our local contacts here as well. So please feel free to contact them. If you are based in India, contact Ramya. If you are based in Africa, contact Farouk. In Latin America, Pamela, etc. And then ZTHC, if you are interested in ZTHC trainers, please contact us as well. And if you are interested in joining our next webinars, the next one is already tomorrow, the water section at the same time, then click on this link or go to our website, to the blog site, and there you can find the information about how to register as well. And here you see some of our team members. We are growing very fast, so we have more team members in the meantime. And with that, I would like to thank you so much for joining this webinar. I hope it was helpful, and please reach out to us. There will be a survey immediately after this webinar when you leave it, and please respond to the survey. It is very helpful for us to get that feedback so that we can always improve continuously. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day and see you soon again.